So now without further delay, let's begin today's event, sponsored by Looker and hosted by Information Management. It's my pleasure to introduce your moderator for today, and that is Eric Kavanagh. Eric, you have the floor.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to the Information Management webcast series. My name is Eric Kavanagh. I'll be your moderator for today's event, an action plan for customer intelligence. Sounds exciting, right? That's because it is. We're going to plow through a lot of really good content today, folks, and the idea here is to make this as interactive as possible. So please don't be shy. Ask questions anytime using the Q&A component of your webcast console. We will queue those questions up as they arise or perhaps at the end of this event. So here are the presenters today. Yours truly at the top, Rick Sherman, my good buddy from Athena IT Solutions, is dialing in. We've got Brian LaFaille from Looker and Alexis Wong from Asana. And I'm just going to say a few quick words here about the topic and my experience with trying to achieve what we're talking about here, an action plan for customer intelligence. And so I looked up the latest version, the 2017 version, and this is just mind-blowing. This is from chiefmartech.com, Marketing Technology Landscape. The Martech 5000. Yes, it's not a blender. That's actually a listing of 5,000 different companies that are involved in marketing technology. 5,000! Think about that. So if you're trying to understand the customer, if you're trying to get that coveted 360-degree view of the customer, or even a 180-degree view, for goodness sakes, just imagine trying to do so when there are 5,000 vendors in this space. 5,000! And I can tell you this, each one of them has a slightly different data model and a slightly different way of doing whatever it is that they do. And yes, our sponsor today, Looker, is in this slide. There are 4,999 other companies. And the key is to be able to find a way to understand who the customer is, viewing through all these various lenses. So obviously, there's no company in the world that uses all 5,000, but quite a few companies will use 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or even 10 of these solutions, sometimes more. And so if you're really trying to understand the customer, you need an action plan. You need to find some mechanism by which you are identifying the key characteristics, you are managing the environment through which you view these customer characteristics. You want to be able to see across these different channels. I remember the first time that someone used the term channel expansion, and I thought, ooh, that doesn't sound good. What are they talking about there? And then I quickly realized, oh, right, Twitter direct messages, Facebook direct messages, Snapchat, of course, phone, email, postal mail. That used to be simply you'd have 2 or 3. Right? Back before the web, you had phone and address. Then you add email to that, and then all these other channels have just exploded in the recent past. And it's really a case of all these different companies trying to better understand you, trying to build their own market share, trying to move their business forward. But for the marketing professional, trying to understand, or even the operations professional or the executive or the consultant, trying to understand who that customer is an increasingly challenging task, and this is one reason why. So you've got thousands, literally 5,000, just on this slide here, companies that are in this space, and like I say, they're all doing things slightly differently, but they all offer some perspective and some context. So the better, the richer the picture you can develop, the better off you're going to be when trying to service those customers or try to get even new customers. So with that, I'm going to bring in my buddy Rick Sherman from Athena IT Solutions to give some perspective on this. And I always refer to him as the hardest working consultant I know because he's almost always on a client site. I'm guessing he's dialing in from a client site now. But with that, Rick Sherman, let us know what's on your mind.
All right. Thanks, Eric. And much of our client work has to do with sales and marketing. And just as you say, I wasn't aware there were 5,000, but I've seen quite a few of them as we've had to integrate the data and help our customers. Let me go quickly. I'm going to just lay out a real quick, as we always have vendors give the hype about how great their products are, and then we're going to see that shortly. I just want to sort of get context to how we got to where we are today and why it's difficult in order to get customer information out. Now, this slide kind of go through a few of the key items that has held back companies from getting a 360 view of their customer. First off, there's lots of tools out there, and I'm not just talking about those 5,000 different applications and vendors. But if you just look at in the BI space, the data integration space, there's lots of tools, and the main vendors in that space have themselves acquired lots of other tools. And these tools have gotten bigger and bigger and more complex to be able to use, which leads to the second picture, which is the nerds, which I teach at a university, engineering graduate level, and I always tell them this is one of my high school pictures. Unfortunately, most of them think it is, but IT has to do much of the legwork in BI in today's traditional approach to BI, and that needs to be able to change. Third one is dollars, and there's been a lot of investment on the BI side for people to get that infrastructure, but that's led to those long queue lines where business people are frustrated. It's led to then data silos and BI silos where the sales, the marketing group, or different marketing teams are going to have their own app that they get to. They can get some good reporting out of that particular campaign or sales pipeline, but when they try to put it all together to see how well they're doing, it's in silos and they can't get to it. And finally, they're all stuck in the mud because all this has led them to difficulty in getting that 360-degree view of the customer. Which leads to my second slide, which is how has the business generally reacted to it? Well, the first way that people have reacted to it is spreadsheets. Tons and tons of spreadsheets, the super glue of data, bringing data in from all sorts of places. We've worked with many customers, and I've done a research paper for TDWI where we talked about spread marts and data shadow systems and how prevalent they are today. That's the go-to tool for most business users. Unfortunately, one of the answers with the latest round of BI technology has been data discovery tools. But unfortunately, due to some gaps in those tools, primarily the fact that there is no data prep or data integration or modeling capability in those tools, what's happened is the data discovery tools have now become the new data shadow systems. So we have that same diagram which we have on the screen today, which has all these different spreadsheets and other data being pulled into different BI tools, and they're just front-ended by some of these data discovery tools. So that doesn't really make us get more agile. It doesn't really help the business person out very much. They're still in the issue of they can't get it from IT, and then they also, when they try to do it themselves, they're limited by the amount of time that it takes in order to put these data shadow systems together. So all these marketing and sales applications are in the cloud. They're hitting big data. They're doing predictive analytics. All great stuff, but you need to be able to tie it together. And just doing it in spreadsheets doesn't cut the mustard. So my third slide really gets to sort of what's the overall sort of technical architecture that's needed in order to enable businesses to be able to look at their data, look at their customers, look at their prospects, look at their marketing campaigns, their sales pipelines, et cetera. And then also finally look at, once they've sold, how much money have they made to the customer, what's their lifetime value, et cetera. So all those things means lots and lots of different data sources. So first off, the key thing is business people, we really are trying to look for a shift in roles in data. One would be IT shifting more in the data infrastructure, that operational data, the analytical data at the bottom tier of this architecture, that they spend more and more time getting that data in place, curating the data, integrating the data when necessary for a larger scale, and working on the backbone of data for business people. Then we need on the top tier, we need a BI environment where we have both self-service BI for the power users, the information analysts, be whatever sales or customer marketing, whatever they are, that they can do their own BI, and also guided discovery for their managers or for their peers who aren't going to spend their time on playing with the data, but want to get their insights of the power users or the people that are really the data experts. And in between, we have the need for the ability for that guided data discovery and self-service BI to be able to have some kind of data prep, data integration, and data modeling capability in order to shape the data, integrate the data in enough fashion so you can tie whatever segment of those 5,000 marketing firms that you're using, data sets that you're using, in order to bring them together. So a basic shift from IT doing everything to IT sort of going in the background and doing the data, more empowerment to the business person, to have the tools so they can do the final mile, as they used to talk about, final connection with the data, to shape it, to figure out, we know what the data is in each of these different tools, each of these customer domains. How do we put it together? How do we fashion it so people can make some sense out of it? Eric?
All right, I think we can now hear from Brian LaFaille. In fact, Brian, take it away.
Hey guys, this is Brian LaFaille from Looker. And thanks, Eric. Thanks for the introduction. Rick, thanks for the kind words and kind of setting the scene here. I just wanted to kind of jump into what Looker is very quickly in one slide, and I think that this one does it well. For those that aren't aware, Looker is a web-based business intelligence and data platform, and you'll kind of notice that the slide that I have here up on the screen here does kind of mimic that same sort of format that Rick just had up previously. And that actually kind of ties together lots of different data sources there at the bottom, bringing it all together into a single database, allowing for the kind of flexible data modeling that is kind of represented by this purple kind of bar right here, and then distributing that data that's been modeled to various different channels and sources. And so, that's essentially what Looker is. Looker is a web-based business intelligence platform, but I think there are three key elements that make Looker kind of special, and I'll go over those here in a second. The first of which is Looker's in database, right? So Looker doesn't cube or store any of your company's data. Rather, we connect directly to a customer's database, ranging from the kind of old school MySQL and Postgres databases to today's latest database dialects, including Spark, Azure, BigQuery, Snowflake, etc. The second kind of key element that makes Looker special is that modeling layer. We are agile, and in the context of data and kind of data modeling, Looker does have a semantic layer. It's called LookML. It's an abstraction of SQL, wherein a company can describe all the relationships between all of these various data sets, how the data is joined together, what the definitions are, and actually describe those for an end user to actually understand what that data definition is. And that really defines, a company's entire set of business logic. It means a single source of truth across the entire company from a single application, right? And that's really one of the standout features of Looker. And third, Looker is a modern platform, right? We are built for the web, meaning that it is data access for every modern employee, from anyone meeting a CEO who just needs to refresh a dashboard on their iPhone, all the way to a very kind of analytically minded data analyst who needs to pipe data out of Looker via our API and into kind of a complex forecasting solution, something like Excel or R. And so we provide a lot of different ways in which people can actually get at this modeled data. And that's what I wanted to kind of represent here, is kind of all of the ways in which Looker can be exported into various channels, the databases that we support, and then how we kind of preach the approach of really consolidating all of that data into a single data warehouse. Now, Eric, you actually kind of set the scene for the number of many thousands of technology vendors that the modern company uses, and we're no exception, right? So at Looker, I wanted to kind of provide kind of the scene of what this looks like in practice at Looker itself. Right, and so you'll see at the bottom we have a number of SaaS applications, including MailChimp, Salesforce, Zendesk, all of those things about our customers that we're then piping into our databases. We have two of them, one of which is BigQuery, Google's BigQuery. The second is Amazon's Redshift. And so we're taking all of that SaaS information about the customers that we're interacting with, and we're putting that into our data warehouse. We're also taking some transactional information from a Postgres database. We're taking the NetSuite information that has all of our business and relationship planning and finance information. And finally, we're taking all of the kind of event level stats about what our customers are actually doing on their servers. And we're aggregating all of that, again, into Redshift and BigQuery. Now, from there, Looker is again that modeling layer that we use internally, right? We drink our own champagne a bit, and that's how we're actually, leveraging these various channels here that you're seeing at the top. And that is, we are actually going into the web interface, an entire set of business analysts on the team actually build reports and dashboards and kind of export this information for KPI distribution amongst the various teams. We're embedding a lot of this information directly back into Salesforce. Our sales reps like to kind of stay within the tools that they're comfortable with, and so Salesforce happens to be that interface that they prefer. Totally fine. We bring the data to them. And so, again, with Looker kind of being web-based, we're able to take an iframe and plop an iframe of a dashboard or a visualization directly into a Salesforce page. We're doing some of that scheduled delivery. So via email and kind of out to webhooks to kind of get backups stored in S3, we are scheduling a lot of this information out to the constituents internally as well with customers. And so we can schedule that out via email in a lot of different formats, and we're doing that in many different ways. And finally, we use our own API via Slack. We actually have a Slack integration wherein anybody can actually ask a very natural language question in Slack interface itself, the application, and get an answer immediately back. And so if I want to know, say, show me the customers in New York, I can type that into my Slack app and get a query result set back right from within the Slack application. And so that's kind of the very tangible and direct use case of our API in action. But, myself being on the customer success management team, I wanted to kind of go into, how we are leveraging Looker ourselves in a very customer-centric way. And I'll kind of get into this and the various data sources that we're leveraging in my next slides. So I mentioned that we actually bring in a lot of our own event analytics. That is the kind of information, it's the feature usage information that our customers are actually doing on the servers themselves. Things like how many dashboards have been built or how many schedules have been scheduled. Are they using our API, and how many events have been sent? All of these kind of anonymous numbers are sent back to our server, which again, we are piping into Redshift and BigQuery. Once we get all of that information into Redshift, with Looker on top of that, our own team, it has a set of analysts that is doing all of that kind of modeling, all of the dashboard building to provide us with actual tangible analytics with something like this. And so this is the kind of quantitative view. This is what we really started first at when we were trying to get at customer analytics at Looker, and it was looking purely at feature usage information. And so that image at the top kind of represents a holistic health score right on the very left, and then on the right are all of the various features that we're tracking about that customer instance. And what we were able to do is say, hey, we actually can have a directional set of principles that says this customer isn't using these features. We can weight those appropriately via the LookML, and that can kind of get us at a kind of a guiding light as to what customers are at risk, what customers have opportunity, and it informs the conversation for my team when we actually go in and chat with customers directly. Now, when I actually join that customer data, that customer usage information in with Salesforce, then I'm able to get something like the image below, which is actually a forecast view. What customers are renewing and what is their health score based on usage. And that was kind of our first step at really making, tangible analytics out of kind of the centralized database. And that's what I really wanted to start with. And the team, we wanted to kind of evolve this over time. And one of the things that we thought was missing was really actually talking about bringing in the qualitative assessment from customers and how we represent that in a data-driven way. And so, our next iteration in the kind of customer intelligence life cycle was saying we have all of this feature usage information that's sitting in our warehouse, and we have kind of these health scores related to each customer account. But we wanted to actually get the customer success reps themselves to identify what is the status based on the meeting sentiment that they've had with their customers. And so we give them the opportunity to do that within Salesforce. And again, because we are piping all of that Salesforce information into Redshift, we are able to come up with something that is the image below that, which is the risk forecast. Basically, what we're looking at here is the feature usage information combined with the qualitative assessment that we get from the CSMs themselves, and that kind of gives us our risk profile. And that would be kind of the kind of current iteration that we're in. The next iteration, this is what we want to get to next and in the future, is we want to actually bring in what the customer is telling us themselves. And that's actually done via something that a lot of technology companies are doing these days, which is Net Promoter Score, NPS. And so what we want to do is kind of bring that entire kind of 360-degree view of, we have the data-driven approach of what the feature usage information is telling us. We have the qualitative assessment of what the CSM on the team actually has assessed the quality of this account based on interactions with the customer. And finally, we want to pair that with the actual feedback that we're getting from the customer. And that's really how we're actually going to get that 360-degree view. Again, all done via Looker, all done with dashboards and things that we're doing via the Looker interface. And so that's kind of our step towards customer intelligence. And I think that's that kind of sets the scene for Alexis at Asana to kind of walk us through how they look at things over there. Eric?
Yeah, it sounds good to me. I love all these pretty pictures, and I love the way you guys are combining quality with quantity, and then that feedback as well, all wrapped in. This is really good stuff, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A at the end, because I've definitely got some questions about how you guys are pulling it off, because I think it's the new way of getting analytics done, and I just love this approach. So with that, Asana, maybe let's throw it over to you.
Sure. This is Alexis from Asana. I'm a business technology developer, meaning that we support our business teams with tooling, automation, and business intelligence, and I support the customer success team at Asana. So, it looks like I skipped over a slide here. I wanted to first start talking about our data infrastructure. I won't spend too much time on this because it kind of mirrors what we've seen previously in this presentation. You can see that we have our app here on the left, and we have all our event logs, what customers are doing within our app. Oh, I forgot to mention, if you're not familiar with Asana, we are a project management / work tracking tool that helps you keep track of all the work that needs to be done by who and when. So we have this app that people are logging into, creating tasks, assigning it to each other, asking each other questions as comments. So we have all that customer usage data in our app, and we transform that into our data warehouse. We also use Redshift. And then over here on the right, we have our workflow tools. You can see some examples in there in red of what kind of tools we're using across our different business teams. And we are pushing data from our data warehouse about what customers are doing in product, as well as what plan they are on, things like that, business data, into our workflow tools that our business teams are using for doing their jobs day to day, keeping track of all their customer interactions. And then we push data about how we're interacting with those customers back into our data warehouse. So everything is centralized in Redshift, and then we have a reporting layer on top of that so that we can see what's going on with our customers across all of the teams. Oblandia is an internal reporting wiki that we have, and then we use Looker for our flexible exploration. So moving on to the next slide, this is a little bit more complicated. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but in case you're interested in more nitty-gritty details about the data infrastructure, you can see we use MapReduce and S3, and then we have Looker over here as our business intelligence layer on top of our Redshift data warehouse. If you're interested, there's a link here for a blog post that describes this in a lot of detail. So we really try to enable exploration and allow people to find their own insights. So a key that we follow is to get data into the hands of people with domain knowledge. So for example, in the customer success team, our CSMs are able to check a hunch for, I have a theory that these types of customers are performing this way or have these types of renewal rates, and they're able to create reports themselves easily through the Looker web interface and test those theories and try to figure out what metrics are really working for them. So we lower the technical bar for self-serving data by having this easy-to-use web interface. And using a flexible tool that makes visualizations and sharing insights easy. Now, this has really helped us to rally around metrics. In the beginning, we are playing around with a lot of things and trying a lot of different metrics to see what we can move and to see what works across teams. And Looker's made that easy for us. And this also eliminates the need for data analysts like myself and our data science team to do one-off queries. So we often, before, we're having a lot of one-off questions of, can you look into the average length of a task before it gets created, things like that, or completed, that we were doing a lot of reactive work. And now with our centralized data and Looker on top of that, a lot of people are empowered to find their own answers by making their own reports. Again, there's another blog post I linked to here that is talking about data exploration. And finally, data delivery. We use a lot of the different channels that Brian mentioned Looker enables. So pull reports, users will go to the Looker interface, create their own reports, refresh them, save their own dashboards, refresh them. We have them displayed on TV, so in each of the pods around our office for each of the teams, we have our key metrics on a TV screen and a Looker dashboard that keeps up to date people so that they can see how we're doing against our goals. We also have push mechanisms, so we will email or create Asana tasks on a regular schedule to notify people to things like, oh, the account health score for a customer is steeply declining, or a renewal is coming up, you might want to check in. We also have been using LookerBot, which is their Slack bot that you can ask, as Brian mentioned, natural language questions and get a report back from in Slack. And we also have used some custom scripts using the Looker API for Slack notifications so that we, for example, will know when a customer has upgraded. We get push notifications in Slack. And we are also exploring in the future embedding Looker reports in Salesforce. As Brian mentioned, our customer success team is in Salesforce as well as our sales team, and they sometimes don't like to go back and forth between tools, so we're looking at bringing the data to them in Salesforce, and as well as embedding Looker reports in our internal BI portal. That concludes my slides. I did want to provide a little bit more detail on some of our data sources. So we also, as I mentioned, we have all the event logs that our customers, they're logging their activity in Asana. We have all our financial information coming from our financial software about what plans customers are on and how much they're paying us. We have an account health score similar to Looker that was put together by our data science team, so we can tell how well customers are doing. We also have our customer success information from Salesforce that tells us what stage of training they're in, whether or not the CSM is worried about them churning. More of that's qualitative feedback. We also do have NPS. We do a customer success specific NPS as well after the engagement is over from our CSMs. And we also have surveys that people can fill out when they upgrade to premium, so we know about their goals. We have a churn survey when they churn to ask what the issue was and perhaps what they're using instead. So we have all of these data sources, that's not even all of them, and we integrate them all together into Redshift and are able to see all of this data and report on it. And some of our goals right now, our metrics that we've rallied around, are around getting our customer satisfaction rate up, generating marketable references, so making relationships with customers so that we can reference them in our marketing. Improving user adoption, so we want to increase utilization of our product at each company, and reducing customer churn. We also, right now, are focused in trying to increase our webinar views. I'd be happy to answer any other specific questions about how Asana uses Looker or data for customer success, but that concludes my slides.
Well, that's really good stuff, Alexis. Thank you so much. Asana is obviously doing some pretty cool stuff, and it looks like Looker data is a big part of that. Rick, I'd like to bring you in real quick, and we can all just kind of have a roundtable discussion here about this topic because it's very interesting. Rick is a veteran, and I've been around for a while myself, and it's very interesting to see what we're basically talking about is the modern analytics platform. And what I mean by that is, when Rick started in this business a couple decades ago, the data warehouse was still fairly new, and getting data into a warehouse was a fairly painful process. And the end result is that whatever analysis you did from that warehouse data had some latency involved, and that was usually at least days, if not weeks, or possibly even a month, for example, in terms of what you're looking at and what you're trying to understand. Whereas today, the scenario that you guys just mapped out here that Asana is doing very cleverly, in part using Looker data, and also I'm using that Twitter handle, Looker data, using Looker, the technology, on top of Redshift. It's a much more dynamic world now, and it's really impressive how much data and how many different data types you're able to bring in to get that strategic view. But Rick, what's your take on the evolution of data warehousing to this current state that we have today?
Well, I think like you said, I think it has been exciting, and I think that the latest set of applications and tools make it much easier for business people to get to the data and understand what the data is. I think we had not only when warehousing first started, did we have the issues of latency and all the difficulty of getting data in there. We also had huge monolithic enterprise relationship planning systems, which we still have, SAP, Oracle apps, go down the list. Those are mind-boggling as far as a business person trying to figure out what the 40,000 different tables in SAP is. But when they get into Marketo, Salesforce.com, and these other apps out there, they understand what the data is. So the newer tools, the tools like Looker, where they can actually get to the data, understand the data, we eliminate IT from having to get the requirements, verify the requirements, create a dashboard. The business person can do that in minutes because they understand the data. They don't have to interpret the data. They understand what the data is. So it's been exciting to see. And then what I also like about the way Looker has presented things, and even the example that we have Redshift in there. It's a warehouse. So it isn't, what I've seen every sort of new generation of these tools has been, we don't need a warehouse. It's like, well, there are certainly cases when you still need professional IT, professional data integration, and there are many other cases when you don't. So having an environment like this has been exciting because you can get IT to shift to where they need to do that kind of heavy-duty data integration, data cleansing, master data management, etc. And then all these other places where the business person can be empowered to do their own, and they don't need to get in the queue for a new dashboard. They can do it themselves. So that's what I think has been really exciting and empowering in order for business people to look at the customers and analyze things much better.
Yeah, and Alexis, I'll throw this one over to you. That word that Rick just used, empowering, it seems to me that is a mantra with what you folks are doing at Asana, right? You're trying to programmatically and systematically empower the business analysts to very quickly do some research, do some discovery, develop a hunch, map that out, try to test it to better understand and validate that hunch, and then in a very short period of time be able to go back to the business and offer some new idea which could improve customer satisfaction, for example. Is that about right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's what we are trying to do is, quickly iterate, kind of modeling it on some practices we see in the product where we're doing A/B testing constantly, we're tweaking things, we're very metrics driven, and we hope that people, and we've seen RCSMs too, have hunches, try to test them. An example I can think of is we are trying to figure out when best to engage customers. We're having a hard time trying to figure out when we could make contact with them and offer them our help. to onboard their teams to our product, and somebody on the CSM team had an hypothesis that, oh, maybe when they create a new team in Asana, so we have companies that can sign up for an account, and a new team, say the HR team might have signed up under a company. And this could be, in the beginning of when a customer first upgrades, or a couple years on as our product spreads to other teams. Maybe we could see when new team members are joining. So we set up a Looker report for that. He tried it out, was able to make some contacts at some big companies where he's been struggling to find points of contact and champions. And now we've operationalized that so that we have Looker create an Asana task every time a new team is created for a customer. We've had a lot of success with that. So people are empowered to, be creative, have ideas, put them into action themselves using Looker, and then we can spread that across the team. So yeah, we're always looking to empower people. We found that once people have access to that data, they're really excited to dig into it. And that is great for us because we just set up the sort of scaffolding to allow them to explore the data themselves, and it's been really rewarding to see them feeling like they have access to their own data.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. I love that term too, scaffolding. I'm gonna pilfer that one and use that in some future event because that's a great metaphor to use to describe what you're providing. You're enabling these business analysts to get up higher and to see more strategically. And you used another really good word there. And Brian, I'll bring you back in on this, and that's iterate. Since the very first days that I spent in this industry, which is about 15 years ago, it just was obvious to me that iteration is the key, meaning you want to be able to test an idea, see the results, and then very quickly modify whatever model or idea or concept or data set it is that you're trying to work with to see what the difference is and to see what the disparity is. Because in that conversation with data, as we'll call it, when you can iterate freely and there isn't a lot of static or friction or latency or even political difficulty to navigate through, that's when you get on a roll, and that's when you can come up with the ideas that are going to change the business, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think you hit the nail on the head with the agility piece. One of the things that I think software has driven in the technology industry specifically is the whole methodology of agile software development, right? You ship product quickly, you get information about that, and then you make changes to the product. And, that's how software developers have, kind of, instead of going through, a more methodical practice of software development, going, end to end, getting into the hands of the customers, they just want to, very quickly test an idea, see if it's going to work, see if they have traction, and then make changes to the software to adjust. And at Looker, we wanted to, provide that same level of kind of agility to the business users and really treat data as a product, as a software product. And why couldn't we just expose all of this company-wide information from many, many different sources? And as you said, allow the business users really to feel empowered to create a dashboard, test that idea, see if that's going to make an impact. And, if it does, then, as Alexis said, we could actually institutionalize that as kind of best practice. And that's what we've seen, my team specifically really thrive on. With access to all of the company's data, we're able to see, some sort of trend or some sort of dashboard, something that gets used widely and frequently. And that becomes, the new tool that is used across the team. And so it allows, my team specifically to become or act almost like software developers in the sense that we can build and iterate on our own dashboards and, uncover new stats that we wouldn't have, been able to even be possible maybe 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, and you kind of hit on a couple things there. One is collaboration, but two is self-service. And that's another one of these critical success factors in the modern world, it seems to me. Brian, I'll throw this back over to you. By enabling self-service, people can get busy and they can stay busy and they can be productive while they're working on something. Because the moment you need to rely on someone else, like, for example, IT, the moment you need to call someone to add a data set or to change a dimension or to do some coding to access a different data set, for example, that creative process is truncated. and you may or may not be able to get back into the zone, so to speak, to get your rhythm again and find out what's going on. So the self-service capability, when coupled with, of course, governance and access to the right data and an environment where you can play around and visualize what you're trying to understand, that's the combination, it seems to me, which yields success and keeps these people, these analysts, busy and productive and keeps the business humming, right?
Exactly. And I think that one of the things that you mentioned is a key aspect that we want to ensure that we're empowering people with the right tools. And so the key word you mentioned there is governance, right? With other kind of subsets of data or information that's unvetted by the analyst team, some sort of marketing analyst or an everyday end business user might come to the wrong conclusion if they're looking at the wrong definition, if they're looking at an incorrect data set. And so that's where, we do want to provide these self-service kind of playgrounds, allowing our employees to, ask and answer their own questions. But we want to make sure that they're doing it with a vetted data source that our core data team is actually defining. And that's what we actually get with LookML, right? And so I think Alexis really talked about that, where, her data team is able to, define the metrics, define the measures, define the dimensions, and then allow the rest of the organization to really self-serve. And so, you can feel, safe and secure as a core data business owner that, regardless of what this person, this business unit or function does with this information, they know they'll be looking at the correct metrics.
Mm-hmm. And, Rick, I'll bring you back in on this one for a variety of reasons. One, you have such a long history of experience with these different tools and technologies, and they do evolve over time. But what I think is so interesting and encouraging these days is that something like a data governance practice is much easier than it used to be, in part because now through these new platforms you can get visibility into data lineage, into data quality, for example, much more easily than you used to be able to. And especially when you're dealing with connections to all these third-party systems, once you get that connection right, let's say it's an API connection, for example, once you get it right, unless someone changes, and that does happen, now you have that nice clear view of that data set. You can augment it with this other data set and slowly, incrementally build up the picture to understand what you're looking at. And I guess the key point I'm trying to drive across here is that no longer does governance need to be an inhibiting factor or an unpleasant and unappreciated constraint on discovery and analysis, right? It's much more of an enabling kind of protocol these days for ensuring quality than it is viewed a hurdle or something like that. But what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think this goes along with we have a lot of projects have gotten started in the last few years on data governance. And the first thing we try to get to is the fact that really the importance is the analytical governance, which is what you're talking about. Sort of the old school back end. We'll make sure all our source systems are all well defined, the SCPs of the world. That's one thing. But what you're talking about, which is the more critical one and the one that's empowering, is the analytical governance, and that's with the business people and the people who have expertise with whichever the sales and marketing tools, applications that they're using, to be able to define that, share it, collaborate with it. And that lends itself to sort of the guided data discovery, which is what I think Brian was really referring to. You have the self-service, and then you have the people who know what this means and knows what the results of this kind of analysis means and shares them. And so you have really the business defining that governance layer, the analytical layer, not IT. And so you have the experts in the business who understand the data doing it. So it definitely is, it not only gets the analysis done quicker, but it means that governance is actually a living, breathing, expanding thing and not just this sort of police state where we have to get these definitions done and someday it'll be in a data dictionary somewhere.
Yeah, right. And Alexis, I'll bring you back in on this one. You talked about the importance of getting subject matter experts involved, getting the people with that business domain expertise, playing with the data, and the key there is to, again, abstract out the complexity of the connections and the systems, the traditional IT stuff, such that the business person can just interact with an environment that is set up for them to have access to the data that they want, right? So you're basically just simplifying the connection from the data to the business analyst such that they can live in a domain that they understand, right?
Right, and to be able to visualize and share and play with the data. And our team will work on bringing in additional data sources as they come online and supporting them in viewing that data.
Yeah, and let me throw a question over to, I guess, both of you, Alexis, to you, and then also to Brian. I love this diagram here where you show, where the production database is versus S3, and then, of course, you're using MapReduce and some other interesting things are going on. Interactive log analysis, that's pretty interesting, too. I'm kind of wondering how much of this can be real-time versus batch. What's the spectrum of latency in data that is able to be handled, and are there some bottlenecks that occur once you hit certain data sizes? Can you kind of just give some perspective and some color on how much throughput you can enable using this kind of architecture? I guess Alexis first, and then maybe Brian just kind of comment on Looker and what it's able to do.
Sure. This is actually a top-of-mind topic here. So
okay, good.
We have production data updating in Redshift every 5 minutes currently.
Wow.
And that will just be our core objects. We have an ETL, an extract, transform, load process that's happening overnight to aggregate the logs with MapReduce. So that's a day. And then also a lot of our third-party tools here are integrating with Redshift around every 10 to 15 minutes. So we found that we are kind of abusing Redshift as a data warehouse and using it more as an operational warehouse. So we are exploring other databases that are able to have concurrent, data updates and reads and handle that better. We are playing with Amazon Aurora right now. We also have Spark for some more streaming data from our production database on a more granular level of tasks and projects. So those are, orders of magnitude more data than, say, just customers and people that are in Asana. So, yeah, we're definitely playing with a lot of different databases that serve different needs and seeing that we are kind of evolving beyond just the one data warehouse for everything.
I love that. I love that you're abusing these systems. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to push them to the limit, see how far you can make it go. That's fantastic stuff. And I guess I'll throw it over to you, Brian. I'm sure it's just all over the map in terms of the business case and the particular scenario at a certain company and how they operate. But what are some of the more cutting-edge, push-the-envelope type environments that you've seen, kind of like Alexis was just saying here, where they're really testing the boundaries? Because I think that's when you find out what's possible, right? You push and push and push, and when it finally pushes back, okay, we have to go in a different direction. But it's in that sort of aggressive, ambitious plan to do as much as you can with the data that cool stuff happens, right?
No, that's exactly right. And Alexis, I have to applaud you for your creativity and technical wizardry to get Redshift updating every 5 minutes. So bravo. I will say that going back to that comment you made, it depends on the use case, right? Some companies will require access to more real-time data. And if that is the case, perhaps a streaming replica of your production database in Postgres and having that connected to Looker is the route you want to go. If you are going to be storing, massive amounts of data for kind of like historical analysis, things like Redshift or databases like Redshift are probably your best bet. At some certain size and scale, those databases do start to break down based on volume or just the amount of queries, concurrent queries you're throwing at the database. And at that point, we typically, start to see newer database technologies, provide a ton of value to new customers. And the ones that come to mind are BigQuery or Snowflake, both of which are managed data warehouses that allow, flexible scaling natively. And the one thing I'd offer is, A lot of the ETL cloud vendors out there have actually, come up with ways in which they've allowed for companies to just move data very, very easily at a very quick pace. And so for us internally, we actually use a company called Fivetran that moves all of our information into Redshift, and that comes from all of our SaaS vendors. And the frequency at which that's being updated is about every 10 minutes. And so we're getting access to all that information, and we didn't have to write any kind of custom ETL scripts at all. That is just coming from a pure cloud vendor. And so I think that we're going to see exciting advancements in that space, given that there is going to be a high demand with the number of SaaS technologies that companies are using these days.
Yeah, that's really cool stuff. And Rick, I guess I'll bring you back in. I have to say, in the last really 2 years or so, I've been amazed at some of the really creative scenarios that companies are building out in terms of their data infrastructure and their architecture. And, I mean, the sky is the limit these days, frankly. I think what we heard Brian just talking about is that there are lots of these new options, and I think organizations really do need to focus on enabling that agility, because to me, we're in a revolutionary period right now about a whole variety of things, including how data is used and how cloud infrastructure can enable new business models. And what we're learning from Asana, from Alexis at Asana, is that creativity pays off. It really helps to find those new ideas, and that's where new business models come from, right, Rick?
Oh, absolutely. I do think, though, that, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I do think, though, that one of the things that it's kind of funny, I'm impressed that they're updating every 5 to 10 minutes. That is more or less best practice now in warehousing, although most people don't realize that. But I find that there are a core set of tools, the underlying databases, cloud databases, not just Redshift, because that's Postgres, but other relational databases on the cloud and private or public, as well as data integration tools, not iPaaS tools, have a lot of capabilities to move data from all different sources for at least as quickly as what we're talking about. It's kind of funny hearing the newer tools coming up to roadblocks, but it is exciting. And I think the blended tools, besides things like Looker, as well as some of the infrastructure databases and data integration technology tools, really empower businesses to move much faster, to update more often. I think that in a lot of times, IT doesn't understand the kind of capabilities they can implement, whether they're using the cloud or not. And I think we need the businesses like the ones we're talking about today to push the IT to actually start moving their infrastructure so they can be more agile, so they can support these kinds of things more frequently. There's no reason why databases, warehouses can't be updated every 5 minutes. You can do that in Oracle, SQL Server, a lot of different databases. So it's important to be able to do that. And then tools like Looker give the business user the agility to do the kind of analytics that they've been wanting to do for a long, long time.
Yeah, and the cloud, it's interesting from the enterprise perspective, from the traditional, say, Fortune 2000 companies. I was really surprised at how long it took for many of those organizations to fully embrace the cloud for all its capabilities and scalability and so forth. But I think that's finally changing. I think that the critical mass has occurred. I think the inflection point is happening right now. And this slide gives you one reason for that. Many of these companies are software as a service providers. And the more of those that come into the mix in organizations, and I think they creep in from all different corners, from different departments and individuals and consultants who come in, because when someone in the business sees some new really interesting and compelling view of their data or of data they can use to better understand their company, well, that's how these companies get that land and expand that we've talked about on other shows. And I guess, Brian, I'll throw it over to you just for some final comments. I guess the question is, do you also feel that the inflection point has arrived, that the cloud in particular is not such a scary thing anymore, and that we're now able to manage these hybrid environments? And I think what you guys at Looker have done are really empowering that development, empowering that synthesis of systems such that people can get that action plan to really understand their customers. But what do you think, Brian?
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, we're right in the middle of this shift where I don't think that IT needs to necessarily feel that this is some big scary place. But I think that what we're seeing at Looker is a number of our largest customers actually deployed Looker with our hosted service. And so they don't feel that the need, and these, mind you, these are companies in healthcare, in financial tech. These are government agencies. These are large companies that are built on things like Amazon's AWS or Microsoft's cloud. And with the proliferation of all of these SaaS tools and the flexibility and the speed to deploy or the speed to value getting that much shorter, the value is hard to pass up. And so I think that is a trend we'll continue to see.
All right, folks, we burned through a solid hour here. Big thanks to all of you for your time and attention. Big thanks to my buddy Rick, and of course to Alexis and Brian for their time today. Here is a slide with all the presenters. Look us up on LinkedIn. We're in the age of connectivity, folks, so check us out. And thanks again for your time and attention, and good luck out there. A lot of cool things happening. I think folks like Alexis and Brian and Rick are all on the cutting edge, and so I'm sure a lot of you folks are doing cool stuff too. Feel free to send us an email or just hook us up on LinkedIn, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. We will archive this webcast. It's usually available the next day, so feel free to share with your colleagues. And with that, we're going to bid you farewell, folks. Take care. Bye-bye.